Hi, guys. Welcome back.
Hi, everyone.
¿Qué pasa? That means what's up in Spanish.
Thanks. Thank you. We do have a Spanish version of the podcast, by the way. All of us are speaking in Spanish. Wait till you hear it. It's pretty cool. Give it a try.
If mainly just for your entertainment purposes, it's fun to hear ourselves in Spanish.
It is. We sound great.
Thank you, AI.
I wouldn't know. I don't even listen to it. I'm not going to lie.
You don't listen to it in English or Spanish. I know.
I don't listen to it. Well, I'm here live, so it's like the same thing.
I understand.
Okay.
All right, guys. So today we're actually talking about St. Joseph. And it was like one of those things where we talked about David. We talked about John the Baptist. We talked about Simba from The Lion King.
I wasn't even there
James
for that
wasn't here
one.
for that one, but yeah. So now we're like, all right, let's move on. Today we're going to talk about St. Joseph. And it's actually kind of wild how it came up. I feel like I have to share that, which is like a pretty significant miracle. Marissa and I had gone to pray together earlier this morning, and I just really felt like this huge presence of St. Joseph, like just feeling like I just was thinking about him and thinking about like what an interesting role he had in the Bible. Like just the fact that he doesn't say much of anything. He's like pretty much silent the entire time, but his role was so significant and so big. I mean, he is the father of Jesus. Like just that alone, Mary's husband, Jesus's father, like the thought of him in that way really just kind of took a hold of me. And I just thought of like the quiet strength of St. Joseph. And then when we were just randomly talking about like different ideas and stuff, James randomly goes, we should probably talk about St. Joseph. And I was like, I was just thinking about him. And Marissa's like, did you tell him? I was like, nope, I didn't say anything to him. So today we're going to be talking about St. Joseph. And I feel like it's through his intercession that we're actually even talking about him.
I believe they call him the terror of demons, right?
Yeah, that is.
And I feel like he's the terror of demons so specifically because not just because he is the father of Jesus, of course that's a big part of it, but it's almost because of his humbleness, his lack of pride. And I feel like that's one of the main things demons can't stand is humbleness because they can't do it themselves.
Wow. I have a funny confession to make. Before I knew anything about anything, I always thought St. Joseph when you do in the name of the Father. And I always thought St. Joseph when I was little, I swear. And when you said the father of Jesus, I was like, oh my God, I used to believe that was always St. Joseph, which is funny because he's not like spoken of like very often, like you said, but that was just, I didn't really understand.
But the thing is, in a way, I feel like Joseph is a mirror image of what God is as a father. So it is very similar. It's almost like Joseph is a almost reflection, like how the moon reflects the sun's light. I feel like Joseph reflects God's light. Wow. The Father, specifically.
That's so beautiful. The quietness of St. Joseph. It's just so like you almost, he matters, obviously, but it's like, but there's just like, well, tell us more about him. Like there's just such a focus on, Jesus and Mary. And then when I first really learned about his trust, his discernment, and his obedience to what God was asking him to do, I mean, he was like, I have no idea where this is going. This makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But if this is what you're asking me, okay, like I'm all in. Well, as much as he could be for the moment.
I mean, like the way that they describe it in the Bible is an angel appeared to him and told him to take Mary as his wife because he was going to put her away quietly because he was he had this reputation of just being this upright man. And they were to be married and she was pregnant. So it was scandalous, like scandalous at that time for this to be happening. And she would have been like, her whole reputation would have been ruined, smeared. And he didn't want that. even though he must have in his humanity felt betrayed. He must have in his humanity
Of
felt
course.
betrayed because he didn't know that the Holy Spirit came upon her. He didn't know that, right? I mean, we're really going full on, Christian right now. But that's just how it is. It's like he had no idea. So he's going from a human perspective and he's like, all right. He's like, well, I'm not going to do anything that's going to make things harder for her. So he was going to be willing to do it like that. But don't worry, guys, because then an angel appeared and told him, you are to have her as your wife. And he said, okay. Like the thought of that in and of itself to me is wild. Because I don't know about you guys, but I haven't had an angel appear to me in that way. And if I did, I might have been afraid. So like the fact that he was so faithful and so willing to give that yes, the same yes that I feel like the Blessed Mother gave, she gave her yes, and then Joseph gave his. And their yes came forth in the person of Jesus. I mean, how powerful is that?
I mean, yeah. I feel like I always related, not always, but I related to St. Joseph a lot when Brian was sick and I was, when we decided to get married. And I'll never forget the first night Brian was diagnosed, not even fully diagnosed yet. There was just like you have a mass in your body. And I'll never forget, he came home and, it was like a whirlwind, but he said to me, you can go if you want.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, okay, I'm not leaving. Like, I'm going to stick by you. But it's like, I didn't know what was going to happen. And, there were plenty of times where I was like sacrificing maybe my own self to make sure he's comfortable or make sure he doesn't feel any worse. And it's like, yeah, I can totally relate to that. Totally relate. But it did take a yes. It definitely took a yes. And trust. Again, like I had no idea where the road was going to lead, but I was in it all. I was in it. I was all in.
That's a different perspective on that. Yes. That is you have me, my mind is really going now because I am thinking about that and that choice that you made. That wasn't very easy. It was like, and you also couldn't see what was going to happen, what was the outcome going to be, but the yes to it. And how many of us have different decisions that we have to make that maybe you feel like you want to say yes, but it's scary. The thought of like giving myself to this is not something that I'm comfortable with, which leads back to even what we were talking about in the John the Baptist episode about how like sometimes you have to get uncomfortable to get comfortable. And wow. Yeah.
I mean, Joseph is the pinnacle of serving. I mean, you look at him and he's like running away to Egypt to, protect Mary and Jesus. And then he's like helping Mary give birth in a manger and with animals in it. And it's just like the way he serves is so like, honestly, I don't know if I could have done that. I don't know if I could have ran whatever miles over just to escape, to keep my kid from getting murdered. That's a lot of fear. I'm sure he was afraid, but the thing was, it didn't stop him. That's the thing. It was because of love that he didn't stop. And I feel like that's the difference. It's love casts out fear. Love casts out hatred. Love casts out everything besides love.
And it's like facing your giants. It's like facing your giants again. It's like even just thinking of the way in which that it came to be, like there was no room for them. And I mean, I feel like a lot of men, when they have a responsibility towards something, they want to be able to take care of what their responsibility is. I feel like that's something that's really important. And I feel like the thought of him not having a place, the baby's coming, we have to do this. And there is and we're not finding a place. And the thought of that must have been so disheartening. You watch that in The Chosen. You see Joseph frantically trying to figure out a way. And like how many times are we in those situations where it's like there doesn't seem to be an open door. there doesn't seem to be a way to make this happen. And then something shows up. And I feel like what they did find wasn't exactly comfortable.
No.
You know, it was a manger. It was like a place for animals. And that's where the Son of God was born. And Joseph was overseeing that to make sure that Mary was okay, which giving birth in those days was dangerous anyways. So Mary was okay and Jesus was okay. And that is a role of like support, which is similar to what you had to go through when you were taking care of Brian when he was sick.
Yeah, the support and knowing how much is out of your control and you're doing, you know, everything in your power to make them comfortable. I'm sure he was doing everything in his power, but he was so limited, you know. I mean, it's hard not to see that frantic face on him, like you said, from The Chosen. But then it's really hard not to see the joy when the baby does come and they're like, oh, we did it. You know, I think it kind of goes back to the previous episode that we just recorded, and it, you know, getting uncomfortable. And when I was talking about, you know, the days after or the moments after that really uncomfortable moment, and then finding that peace and finding that comfort after, you know, it's, but it's really hard to go through.
Yeah. I think about it in terms of Yvette, even like in thinking of when she was here and then she felt like she was being asked to go to Spain. And I could remember like the way that she felt split emotionally. Like it was like, I don't want to go to Spain. I want to be here. But she felt like God kept showing her different doors for Spain. And it was like for her, it was like a matter of courage. It was a matter of faith. It was a matter of listening. And then she said yes to Spain. And the crazy part about that was when she did get home to Spain, every door that was open for her closed. It was like, you asked me to come here. You asked me to leave where I was comfortable to go back to a place where I wasn't sure I was going to be comfortable, for doors that were open that all of a sudden closed on me. And like thinking about that in terms of St. Joseph, it was like he was asked to go with the Blessed Mother. And then he gets told again in the middle of the night, get up and move because they're trying to kill your son. So what does he have to do? Again, he has to pivot. He has to change his direction. He has to make another move in order to be safe. And then that's what Yvette had to do also. And that's what we all have to do in our life in certain circumstances. When it looks like this is going to be the way to go, maybe that's not your open door. Maybe there's another path for you. But we have to be willing to be brave enough to maybe wait on the Lord, wait and move in the direction that we're supposed to be moving.
It reminds me of me when I was right before I decided that I was going to leave my old town where Brian and I had lived. And I had lived there about 4 years by myself after he passed away. And I'll never forget it. It was like, talk about pivot. I was driving out of the parking lot right after adoration, and I was going in one direction and my house was in another direction. I don't know. It was just so like, and Jesus was like, you're going the wrong way. Like those were the exact words that I heard him say. And that was like step one. And I was like, okay. So I went in the way he was asking me to go. And if we're talking about like literal directions, it was like at that moment, it was either a left or a right. Again, I'm like in my car on the street, left or right. Little did I know my new house was actually straight. And it's just like that image or that thought for me is so fascinating because I had no idea. You know, I was like, okay, so I'm going to sell this house. I'm going to give up everything that I knew. Like, where am I going to go? Can I afford this? Can I, you know, so many questions or whatever. Like after I made that first step, and now the next step was to find the new house. And it was like, I had no idea. I just knew that it was like time. I knew that it was the direction he was asking me to go. And like, again, like my house was across the street from where I was. Like, I had no idea.
I think that's how life is. If you look, and again, it's like that hindsight is 2020, but when you look back on the different decisions, the different choices that you have to make, and the sense of like, this is what I'm being asked to do now. Like, this is where I'm being asked to go now. Do I have the courage to say yes? Mm-hmm. Like, I think of when Mike and I first got married, we had an apartment. We were both like working. We both were like making money. The apartment was a very easy way to live for the time. And I remember my in-laws were going to sell their house, and they were like, is anybody interested in buying it? And we were like, no way. Like, we are not buying that house. Like, we are in a good position right now. When it's time for us to buy a house, we'll buy a house. But then it just kept coming up again. And we were just like, should we consider it? You know, like, is this something that we should consider? And it was like, we eventually did. We said yes. We ended up making that move, making that pivot, like a change that we weren't ready for. We weren't even really that comfortable with. And then my sister-in-law ends up buying the house across the street. My other sister-in-law ends up buying the house around the block. And before you know it, it's like you have a built-in family that is in walking distance. And the amount of years that we've spent, like 4th of July barbecues, New Year's Eve, like all of the different things that we've been able to do together because of that one simple yes, when it wasn't comfortable. It was like a decision that was like hard to make because we were like just figuring out our money, you know, like, how are we going to be able to do this? And I couldn't have seen like the relationships that my kids have with their cousins just based on the proximity of that is something that is such a gift. But at the time, I could never have imagined that they would be living in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, I think the point too is the decision is definitely uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. You know, because you're like, you can't see how, you can't even imagine how. And I think if you do say yes, then the opportunity for the open doors do show up, mm-hmm. You know, if you pivot and like God always makes a way. But I think it's something to say too, like the journey isn't easy either. Mm-hmm. You know, Joseph said yes. Mm-hmm. And as we know, the journey wasn't easy. Mm-hmm. Like the decision was uncomfortable, but the rest of it wasn't comfortable. Mm-hmm. But I think the fruit of following God's plan, even when you can't see, or even when you don't know, or even when you don't even understand, there's always going to be something more for you that He will provide.
I feel like it's constantly you hear, you know, there's consequences to your action, and usually that's used when you do something wrong, when you do something bad. But there's consequences to every action, good consequences and bad consequences. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's almost like what it is. It's like in life there are consequences and God gives them. Sometimes it is like you do have to get a little bit like wrong because you do something wrong. And then I feel like sometimes, you know, you're rewarded. You're, I guess in St. Joseph's place, it's like, well, now your baby's safe. Hooray. But it's almost like, I feel like you have to take action. When He tells you to take action, you have to take it.
I'm thinking about my dad. I'm thinking about the decisions and the way that he was when we were growing up. It was like he as far as I remember, he always had this huge faith in God. It was huge. And I could remember when he was coaching, I don't know, I might have told this story on the podcast before, but when my dad was coaching, he coached hockey, Good Shepherd hockey. And I could remember my brother was a very talented athlete. He was so good at hockey. And he was like one of the best. And so when they would pick the teams, the kids would go in a lottery, but like my dad was the coach. So like my brother automatically would go on my dad's team. But my dad was he was a fair coach. Like if you weren't the best on the team, you were still getting playtime. Like his goal was like, it wasn't like majorly competitive. He wasn't training them for like the Olympics. He was training them for teamwork, for support, for like everybody's loves everybody, whatever. And so basically, my brother didn't like it. My brother's like, we never win. Like, we cannot win with the way that you coach. And my dad and my brother would be like, you know, arguing. And my dad was like, well, if you want, I could put you in the pool and you can get taken by another coach. And my brother was like, yes, I want to get taken by another coach. And my dad was like, you know, I think he was like devastated, but he put him in the pool to get taken by another coach. And nobody could believe it. Like, and my brother got picked by like the team that had the best players. But my dad picked all of my brother's friends to be on his team. So it was like, and if like Dave Cruz, Tommy Maroney, Joey Brace, like all of the other hockey player kids that were best friends with my brother were now chosen for my dad's team, and they were the green team, and then my brother's team was the black team. And my brother's team was the best. They were so good. But somehow, and I don't know how Good Shepherd hockey worked, but I know at the end of the day, my brother's team ended up playing my father's team in the finals. And it was like David versus Goliath. It was an actual living out of David and Goliath. And when you watched that, I mean, I remember I hated going to those hockey games because it was always so cold out. But even I was like, I have to watch this game. And do you know my dad's team won? My dad's team, that team, I don't know how they did it. Nobody knew how they did it. It was literally David and Goliath. They ended up winning. And it was like, my dad was so upset because my brother lost. But it was like this amazing moment of like a yes, like that fatherly yes to God. Like, I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to do the right thing, even if it doesn't look like it's the right thing.
It reminds me a lot of the prodigal son. Mm-hmm. I mean, the father let go of the son, and I feel like that's almost what happened with my uncle and Pop.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Michael's gonna love this episode. He's a prodigal son.
Did he return the next season?
I took a turn. I actually don't remember. All I remember is that, and I remember my brother's best friends being like, Tommy Maroney's really standing out. My brother's friend Tommy was like to my brother, you should really be ashamed of yourself letting your father down this way. But don't worry, I'll take care of him. Like, it was like it, and even to this day, it's like a family joke or whatever. But yeah, the one crying at the end was my dad because he felt so bad for my brother. But it was like, yeah, it was just one of those things, and it was one of those things where it was making a decision that is a harder decision to make for like it was for the kids, you know. And my dad's team won. It was David versus Goliath, basically.
So you call that a fighter's chance, James, right?
Oh, yeah. I honestly didn't think they would have a fighter's chance from what my mom says.
They wouldn't. It was not right. My dad's team shouldn't have won that game. But I think that sometimes is how, you know, I feel like that's how sometimes it must have been for St. Joseph. Like, he didn't have he had a fighter's chance. Like, that's all. It was like David versus Goliath the whole entire time because the king, Herod, wanted Jesus dead. That was what he wanted.
I think it's like silent strength.
Yeah.
You know, it's that your dad, it just reminds me like your dad didn't need the recognition. Your dad didn't need to win every game. He just knew what was right. And then, you know, they won anyway, and how cool. But yeah, it's just St. Joseph had such a silent strength about him. You know, we don't even really know when he died.
No.
Just like one of the members of the Holy Family, we don't even know when he died. You know, it's like so crazy to even think about that. Such a prominent figure. Mm-hmm. But, you know, that's like the perfect depiction of him.
Yep. And I would say if you have giants in your life, if you have anything that you're struggling with, I very strongly suggest that you ask St. Joseph for his intercession. You ask for him to be praying for you because there is something so powerful, historically speaking, in the church. He is huge.
I mean, St. Joseph is the descendant of the giant slayer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah, and I just think remembering, like, if you're on a path that you feel like God has asked you to be on and you can't see anything in front of you, like, just know that he's, I think, I don't remember if it was this episode that you mentioned or not, but like, he is answering your prayers from day one, you know? And yeah, I mean, I feel like, you know, now that I think about it, St. Joseph really has been so present, I feel like, in the last couple of months for us between, you know, the prayer center and the churches that we've been going to. It's like, again, it's almost this like silent strength of protection and intercession.
And I feel like if you're that type of person who is not in the spotlight, who doesn't get looked at, who maybe sometimes is overlooked because you're not the one that is loud, you're not the one that is seen, you're not that one. Maybe St. Joseph is somebody that you can really relate to. Maybe St. Joseph is somebody that can really relate to you also, because, you know, you don't have to be in the spotlight to be having such a huge impact on people. Like, I think that he could be a really great witness for that too, because like you said, we don't even really know when he died. And the fact is that it was never about him. It was never about him. And we all get that lie sometimes that you hear in your mind. Well, it's never about you. It's not about you, so just shut your mouth. It's not about you, so just do this. But instead of maybe it's not about you, just shut your mouth. Maybe it's not about you, but it is. Because look at the role you have. You know, it's like looking at it from the perspective of St. Joseph. Like, maybe he seems as though he was overlooked, but he never, ever was. His role was huge, huge. And I think that that's something that anybody out there who feels like they're not seen, maybe you're seen a lot more than you realize, and you matter a lot more than you realize.
Wow. Amen.
Anything else?
I don't have anything.
Tiny miracles.
My tiny miracle is my new curling iron. I don't know. I just love it. It's been a long journey of curled hair for me, so I found a new one that I love so much. So
it is pretty amazing. I love it. When you get a new product that you just love, it is something like, there's now in my mind, I have 1,000 products that I want to be grateful for. But my tiny miracle is my dad had some medical issues and he is coming home tomorrow. So my tiny miracle is my dad gets to come home tomorrow.
My tiny miracle was while in Florida, we went to St. Augustine and we went to historic town, and me and my dad went to the cathedral or basilica, and there happened to be adoration in there. So I got some nice adoration in Florida.
That's amazing.
That's awesome.
I realized that my tiny miracle is a couple of nights ago, one of my dearest friends from high school asked me to be her son's godmother in a couple of months. And it's just such a special honor. And, you know, her and I go way back. So to have that constant friend and then someone who sees you in that way and wants you to be part of your life and her children's life in that way is just so special. And not having any children of my own, like, godchildren are so special. So
yeah. What's her name?
Nicole. Shout out to Nicole and baby Matthew and all the other kids because I love them so much.
All right. Thank you guys.
Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.
See you in a few, kangaroo.
Bye-bye.
Bye.